Hey, welcome to 9394, a music podcast with me, Travis. I hope you're doing good. I have on the show today a stalwart supporter of 9394, a regular contributor. Dustin Lince has come back, and he's here to talk about the 1993 album Republic from the band New Order. And he's pretty knowledgeable about them. He's a big fan and a big fan of the album. So he's the right man for the job, which was, hey, come on my show and talk about this album that you love that came out in either 1993 or 1994. So here he is. Check out our conversation. Thank you.
I lay, yellow fever, yellow hay. Feel the rhythm, the sweetest sound. Make it break in sacred ground. I'll give you a piece of my love for free, but whatever I say you'll never see. A quiet taste for a different sound. Make a break this side of town.
Dustin, thank you for coming back to 9394 for your fifth visit. You're in the Five Timers Club. Thanks, buddy.
Fifth visit. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 5 times.
Yes.
Like Booker T, 5 times.
Awesome. And which album are you here to talk about for your fifth visit here today?
New Order's Republic.
That album cover is so provocative. The burning and then the two guys or whatever with the circular life.
Yeah.
It's a inflatable tube or whatever.
Inflatable tube, yeah. It's same guy, Peter Saville, who did all their album covers and all their inserts, even going back to the Unknown Pleasures, the famous Joy Division picture.
Classic image, yeah.
Yeah, the classic. He did that one also, and then just kind of throughout the sleeve, there's like the different aspects of California, like the burning, like the wildfires, and that was just after the LA riots in '92, and then people having fun on the beach.
A little juxtaposition there going on.
Yeah.
It's subtle.
Yeah, well, they kind of like, relating it to like the fall of Rome kind of stuff. Like that was what they were kind of going for.
Yeah, interesting. I guess that's the name coming into play, Republic. So how did you get into this album?
I was a New Order fan from the time I can remember. On your podcast a lot, people talk a lot about 89X. The radio station from Windsor that we were lucky to get where we were at in Michigan.
Yeah. I
moved to Livingston County in 11th grade, but I grew up in Metro Detroit. So I grew up on 89X, and just when they had this show on Sunday morning called The Time Warp.
Yep, I remember that.
I was never someone who slept really late. Growing up until I got later in life. So every Sunday I would listen to Time Warp, and it would expose me to the earlier 80s alternative, where I got into like Elvis Costello and the Buzzcocks and the Cars and stuff like that.
And they were always good about playing that kind of stuff in regular rotation, like outside of that show too. So you get some of that stuff in your regular listening.
Well, in the late 80s, early 90s, that was the start of like the rave culture and like the ecstasy culture. And 89X also had the Club 89X at night, and they played a lot of like dance music and a lot of New Order. And, from the time I heard their first single, Temptation, I just, there was Temptation, there was Bizarre Love Triangle, there was, Blue Monday, True Faith, all those songs, all those singles were regulars on the Time Warp and, the Club 89X show at night on Saturdays. So I was always in the New Order.
Yeah.
And then probably listening to 89X, I heard the beginning of Regret, and it kind of sounded like Ceremony, their first song that they recorded, which was also a later Joy Division song. And it kind of caught my attention. And just, of course, it was their new song, Regret. And I loved it from the jump.
Sounds like we had a very similar experience. I was not as into, I slept in late as a teenager. And I didn't listen to much dance music. I was never really into that too much. I mean, it's funny. I've gotten less into techno as I've gotten older and anything like remotely electronic. But I mean, at that age, I was listening to like that Deep Forest CD that came out around that same time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I was listening to some of that kind of stuff, and I definitely was familiar with all of the singles that you mentioned. But same thing. When I heard Regret, I'm like, I am getting this cassette, and I got it from BMG or Columbia House One, and got it.
Yeah.
And then I'll be honest with you, dude. I listened to it. I loved Regret, but I wasn't in love with the rest of the album. So in the spirit of full admission, this was one that I put down for a long time, and just not my favorite genre as much as I love some of the songs on it.
Yeah.
I'm glad to talk about it with you because I do feel like it's more than the cover that's iconic. I feel like it's one of those albums from the era that everybody knows, but they don't necessarily talk about as much as maybe they could or should.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely my least favorite New Order album.
Oh, yeah?
Of the 90s albums, I guess.
Okay.
Kind of after this album, they, but the earlier albums.
Yeah.
After this album, they kind of went on a hiatus.
Yeah, they were like in a place of not getting along together, right? When this album was made, like there wasn't a lot of love between the members of the band, as I understand it.
Mostly like Bernard and Peter Hook, Hooky.
Okay.
That's why Hook is no longer in the band. They just, they weren't getting along, and it wasn't really, they really didn't think that they were going to have another album.
Mm-hmm.
They owned this nightclub in England called the Hacienda.
Okay.
They owned it with their, and we can get into the culture historicness of the Hacienda later, but just in relation to this album, they needed to make a new album to fund the club.
So they kind of had a gun to their head, which is not necessarily when you create your best work.
Yeah, and so a lot of times they had songs working, they had ideas from songs, they've been working together since they were teenagers, and they had ideas of songs and stuff like that, and this was like the first album that they came together, and it was like, kind of had to start from scratch.
Oh.
They weren't together.
Mm-hmm.
Jillian and Peter were married, and they were working with Bernard every once in a while, but, Hooky wasn't getting along with everybody else.
Okay. So, let's start with the big dog here, the main event. What's your favorite track off this album?
Oh, Regret. I mean, it just...
Yeah, mine too.
I would like a place I could come up, have a conversation on the telephone, wake up every day, that would be a star. I would not complain when my room gets hard. Just wait till tomorrow. I guess that's what they all say. Just be full before our heart.
I mean, it has to be everybody's. It's probably one of the most easily accessible New Order songs of any of them. Even the big hits, like, Blue Monday and Bizarre Love Triangle.
Yeah.
They're techno, and I mean, and like you said, I wasn't a huge fan of techno either. Probably if it wasn't for, like, their first album, Movement, which kind of stuck to, like, the Joy Division vibe and was less techno-y, I might not have gotten into them. But Regret, it was kind of like, it was the grunge times, and they had that guitar at the beginning and that hook, and, it's probably one of the most accessible New Order songs that they have.
Yeah, it was the grunge time, but it was also like Duran Duran was big again all of a sudden around this time too, and there was like Depeche Mode was releasing new stuff. So there was definitely like kind of a rising tide lifts all boats kind of thing in the alternative scene, where I think that had this album been released a couple years before, it may not have gotten quite the attention that it ended up getting because alternative had gotten so big during this time. But I remember listening to Regret, and I went to Schaefer's House of Music in Howell, Michigan, and made the purchase of the song sheet, like, like the musical tablature. And it wasn't the tablature, it was like the actual, like, chords and to read the music, which I can't fucking read music at all. So I don't know what I was thinking on that one. But I was like 12 or 13 and like, I want to learn this song. I want to learn the song on guitar. And so I remember like sitting down with that music sheet in my acoustic guitar, which I've been playing for like 6 months or whatever, and being like, oh, I can't do this. This is an impossibility for me. And I just owned that sheet forever. But I don't know what became of it, but never did learn how to play that song on guitar for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it is not like reinventing the wheel, but it does have the electronic feel and stuff like that. Yeah, the music was hitting big, and it is, even though like Blue Monday is the top selling 12-inch of all time.
It is?
Of any genre, yeah. But like,
really?
Regret was their top charting U.S. song ever.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and this album was their top charting, U.S. album ever. America wasn't into like dance music, and like
we were about to be though.
We were about to be, and that's the thing. Like England was more progressive as far as like white people who listened to rock music accepting dance music before the United States.
Oh yeah, which is probably a big influence from Berlin and stuff too.
Yeah, of course. And that's kind of what New Order did. They kind of like, and not from this album, but they kind of like changed, coming from like Joy Division that changed music, like Love Will Tear Us Apart next to Smells Like Teen Spirit. It's probably 1-2 in the most genre affecting songs of alternative music, and for them to come back 2 years later and form another band that pretty much just defined how electronic and pop music happened after that, it's amazing. Like
there's no story like theirs. The whole rising from the ashes things. Yeah,
they changed the world twice. They changed music twice. With two different bands. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's really unheard of. I always forget the name of the singer of Joy Division who took his life. What was his name?
Oh, Ian Curtis.
Ian Curtis. Yeah, so he passes away, and for a lot of bands that would have been the end of it. But it's like Nirvana and Foo Fighters. Since you brought up Nirvana, like I do think that there's a correlation there too. I don't know if Foo Fighters changed music in quite the same way, but they became arguably a bigger band in some ways. Not a bigger band than Nirvana, but certainly longer lasting. At any rate, but it's pretty rare that you get that whole Phoenix thing where bands are able to reinvent themselves and be successful in a different way, and they definitely pulled it off. New Order.
Well, like Ian Curtis died May 18th, 1980. New Order's first show was July 29th, 1980.
Jesus, they wasted no time.
Zero time. So when Ian Curtis died, the day before Joy Division was supposed to go to America, and Love Will Tear Us Apart was just starting to come, and it was going to be like the next Beatles. Like they were gearing up to be like the next Beatles invasion of Manchester, bands like them, and just coming from England to do this next British invasion. And then it all got canceled when Ian died, and they went straight to work. Their manager still ended up going to New York and still ended up going to America after Ian died, and he got immersed in the club scene and in the dance culture, and actually tried to sign the Furious Five when he was in New York, and was told to fuck off. And he came back with this whole new dance culture, and they picked up right from there. They played a show like 3 months later, as a three-piece.
Fascinating.
It's crazy.
Now on this album, despite the fact that I owned it and listened to it back in the day, it's been a long time since I picked it up and spent some time with it. I did find that I grew to like it more the more I listened to it, and it's definitely an album that for me, I find that like putting it on and listening to it around my house while I'm like doing chores or whatever, like it kind of started to get like, all right. But driving at night in the dark and like got the New Order going, like it's a good vibe right there. That's a good feeling right there.
Yeah.
I was pretty happy with that. So I definitely feel like there's some strong moments on here, but there are some weak ones too. I'm not going to name a song that I find to be the weakest on the album for me because I don't feel like I've got a dog in that fight, but I'm curious what do you think? What's your least favorite song here?
I mean, probably Everyone Everywhere.
At the end of the day, there's no food on
I think it's like number 5. It's just kind of and just kind of slow and just dragging and just kind of like generic lyrically and just not. I just don't really feel it.
You know, it's funny. I sat down right when I was like waiting for you to log in. I'm looking at the song titles. I'm looking at all of them, and I'm like looking at them all, and I'm like, I know every single song on here. I can think of which song it is, and I look at Everyone Everywhere. I'm like, which one is that again? That's the only one I can't place in my mind, like how it goes. Which that kind of says something. Maybe I can't even think right now how it goes. Like it was the least standout to me. I mean, I'm not going to name it as my least favorite, but like, it's the only one that I don't remember. So I think that says something.
You know, the song before it, Spookies, it was one of the singles, and that's kind of it's not a great single, but it's a good song. And then to go from that to Everyone Everywhere, it just kind of takes the air out of the balloon, I guess.
Where Regret is more straightforward, right?
Yeah.
It's a pretty straightforward song. Spooky definitely is like, okay, this is a techno song. This is a dance song. And that's like when I started to be like, I'm not so sure, but I could see it having a big impact on the genre for people that are fans of it back in the day, especially.
Well, it was a single. It was
That's
a single from the album, and it was a single, and it is probably the most techno single. And that was one of the singles of the album. There's 4 singles released on the album, and that was kind of the one that I didn't remember the most until I was listening to it, and then the memories came back of, you know, driving at night, listening to Club 89X and stuff like that.
So there's 2 other singles on this album. I'm not sure what they are. Can I guess?
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess that the other singles on this album is World one of them?
Yeah, The Price of Love. Yeah, that was that's kind of on. Yeah,
it's catchy. I thought that might be one. And then the other one, is it Liar?
No, it's Ruined in a Day. It's the first 4 songs.
That's my second guess. First 4 songs. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, I don't even remember. Like, I remember to read and say there was 4 singles from this album. I wouldn't have believed it. And then listening to the album, I kind of remember, these songs were on the radio.
Yeah, could have been different in UK, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like maybe 4 singles in the UK, but maybe, I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe there's 4 in the States as well.
Well, they kind of were in the habit of not putting singles on albums. They owned part of their record label, and they were kind of under the habit of releasing 7 and 12 inches, you know, just releasing singles, you know, like Blue Monday wasn't on Power, Corruption, and Lies. It came out after Power, Corruption, and Lies, you know.
But the technology and the whole music system, like the distribution system, changed during that time too, where like by the early 90s, people maybe were still buying like single cassettes and even single CDs and stuff, but people were doing that less and less. They're starting to buy albums more and more.
Well, and they signed to a major.
Well, that would do it too, yeah.
They were on Factory, which was like the first independent record label in the UK. They ended up signing with Quincy Jones.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Quest Records, and then which is from Warner Brothers. So after they did that, they don't release singles very much.
Gotcha. And since I brought up Liar, I do want to touch on that one for a minute, because I think that we're kind of getting at, this is all New Order. There's also some genre playfulness taking place here, like different kind of elements being plugged in. And Liar, I want to call it Liar, Liar. No, that's Jim Carrey. Just one Liar. Liar is interesting to me because it's got this adult contemporary thing going on. Like it almost sounds like Sade or something.
Yeah,
it's not
groovy.
like soft rock, but it's almost like, like it's groovy. It could sound like my dad would have listened to it maybe in the early 90s when he was all into like David Sanborn and shit.
Right.
I could see that being a single in its own right. That's why I guessed it.
Yeah.
But for like a different collection of musical enthusiasts.
Yeah, I love Liar.
It's a good song.
That's one of my underrated songs, I like
Okay.
the hook, it's like, I can't stand the music always playing, it's hooky and I love it. It's dancey. And
backing vocals are strong too.
Oh, they're awesome. Yeah, the
like
female backing vocals. I don't know if that's actually Jillian singing backing vocals or if they brought somebody in. I didn't have time to look it up.
Well, apparently they had a thing where they didn't really like list that stuff on their album, so you can just kind of have to guess. I know that she's credited for the lead vocals on the last song, but I'm not sure about the backing vocals on Liar. And there's another, I think, World. It's the same female backup singer, which I think she adds a lot.
Oh yeah, it's very soulful.
You say it's one of your underrated. Is that the one you chose for your underrated? Or did you pick a different one for your underrated track?
I was going back and forth. Young Offender.
Young Offender, that's the one?
Right before Liar, yeah, I love that song too.
Yeah, that one, it's kind of lengthy, right?
Yeah, it's got kind of a, kind of like a techno, like breakdown in the middle, or like kind of like a dance breakdown in the middle. The call and response, chorus and stuff, it's just groovy and, hooky and, great song. And
it wasn't a single, and it's not one you hear people talk about, so it's kind of buried in the middle, maybe a little bit, so I can see where it can get underrated for some folks, for sure.
Yeah, and it comes right after Everyone Everywhere and like
picks you back up.
Yeah, for that song and Liar, and then the rest of the album is pretty strong, if you're into, dance, techno. I mean, it's not my top genre, but the rest of the album after that's pretty strong.
I did pick an underrated, and my underrated comes on the second half of the album. I went with the last song. I went with Avalanche. It's really pretty. I think it sets a good vibe. I think that there's weirdly some kind of parallels between it and Regret in some way. I think that they kind of bookend each other nicely. Simple song, but just has a good mood, and it's pretty. I like it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that one too. If there would have been more vocals on it, I would probably think, when I listened to that, when I was going through the album, gearing up for the podcast, when I was listening to that, I was kind of like, this song is kind of reminiscent of my favorite song off the Wish album, Trust, where it kind of like builds up with the synth, and then it kind of like, you think it's gonna go really hard, and then it just stays, just stays kind of like, droney and just kind of like, pretty, and it just, that's a great song also.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly come to like a distinct moment of release that you might like be waiting for, but in other ways, I think that's one of its strengths. What's her name that's singing on this one?
Jillian.
Jillian?
Yeah, she's the keyboardist, other guitarist.
She's a keyboardist and guitarist?
Yeah, well, mostly guitar. She joined the band. She was dating Peter, the drummer, and then they found out that Bernard couldn't, or none of them could sing and play guitar at the same time. So they're like, okay, well, you play guitar, and
cool.
we're gonna let you in the band. And that was for 1980, for a band as established as Joy Division.
Yeah.
They could have added anybody in there, an established musician. Johnny Marr was their buddy. They could have.
Okay.
They could have added anybody. To add just somebody who wasn't known, was just the drummer's girlfriend, and then that in general, to add a woman to the band was big back then, back in 1980.
Sure. And also, I mean, I could see being friends with Johnny Marr, like, that'd be a get for anybody to get him in their band. But I could see where if you're in a band and you're kind of like restarting yourself, where you want someone that you can trust and someone that is a known quantity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Capable, obviously. She does good work here. So, like, obviously she's a talented individual. So they didn't necessarily need to go get the best guitar playing man that they could, because here's someone that they knew and cared about that could do the work and do it well, that already worked in their dynamic. So, I mean, I'm speculating a bit here, but that's what it sounds like.
Well, yeah, and they didn't suffer from the Fleetwood Mac thing where they, they ended up getting married and having kids, and they're still together to this day. So it's like they didn't end up having to any tension with that. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they could have done the Superchunk thing where Mac and Laura broke up, and he writes all these songs about their breakup, and then she's like singing all the backup on the songs about her. Then it's weird stuff.
That's a Fleetwood Mac Mac template.
Right, it's a weird way of doing things. So I'm glad it worked out for them. Okay, so is there any other songs on here that you want, or anything else about New Order you wanted to get into before we moved on to our final piece of conversation?
No, just, I touched on it, just amazingly how they were just able to just reinvent themselves and pretty much just and I heard, doing research for this, I listened to this amazing podcast called Transmission, which is like the story of Joy Division becoming New Order and stuff like that. And they were just, to talk about their impact on not just alternative music, but Derek May and Kevin Sanderson, who invented techno from the Belleville 3 of Detroit, would go over and DJ the Hacienda, and they were influenced by, New Order. And the song Everything's Gone Green, that was one of the last songs that they wrote on Movement. It's that's credited with influencing the first house DJs, Chicago house DJs. When they came to America, they were, I guess, a rock band that didn't go and seek out American rock bands. They went to Detroit. They went to Chicago. They hung out in Detroit, and they went to these warehouse clubs. And I heard this quote on that Transmissions podcast, and they said that they changed the world twice, bands that did alternative music and pop music, after Joy Division wanted to sound like Joy Division. If they didn't, they sounded like New Order. And for a band who played guitars and stuff to bass, to so embrace rock music, they invented a whole new genre. There were bands like Kraftwerk and stuff like that, but they didn't incorporate live instrumentation. And with their first album, Movement, they kind of invented techno. People use synthesizers on Love Will Tear Us Apart, but people weren't using computers as musical instruments. Movement, they did, and they kind of just changed the way that, coming from Love Will Tear Us Apart, that changed alternative music, and then they formed New Order, and then they changed pop music forever. Now pop bands use electronics and live instrumentation. Sure. They didn't do that, and it's from the New Order influence.
And I'm not sure they get quite the acknowledgement and appreciation that they should. So I'm glad that you bring all that up. And I'm glad that you bring up Detroit. Obviously, you and I are biased in favor of that great city, but it has a huge role in dance music. And that there's a connection between New Order and Detroit. I didn't know that. That's interesting to learn.
On that podcast, Kevin Sanderson and Derek May are interviewed, and they're New Order of any dance music, dance culture back then was an African American and an LGBT, thing.
Disco
and
on,
yeah, and these
Puerto Rican, also largely Puerto Rican.
Yeah, and these white working class guys from Manchester and women from Manchester, embraced it, and they did it, and everybody wanted to do it how they did it after them. It's crazy. They said in that podcast, they kind of made it okay for working class white men to loosen up. It went from like working class white men listened to like rock and roll and like Black Sabbath back then in England and, stuff like that. And New Order came out, they kind of loosened up a little bit and started listening to dance music and dancing. They kind of like loosened up working class white people. And it's crazy.
It's awesome. And that seems like a good segue to get into our next subject, which ordinarily at this point of the show, I would like introduce some random 90s thing or otherwise random piece of trivia or something. But you and I are going to talk about another album today.
Okay, nice.
Your album.
I like it. Oh, shoot.
We're going to talk about your newest release from your band, Teardrop Versus Freight Train, the EP.
Yes, sir.
With the wonderful title of The Dance Dance Revolution Will Be Televised.
Yes, sir.
Which you released this year. It's a 6-song EP, and I'm guessing that New Order is an influence.
Yeah, big time.
Yeah.
Big time.
Tell us about it. How would you describe the genre?
Kind of like,
Teardrop versus Freight Train. It sounds like that.
Yeah, kind of like electronic screamo or like new wave core, I guess.
Okay.
If you want to use that core, shoegazy, new wave core, I guess.
If Post Malone started a screamo band.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I love that.
I know you like Post Malone.
Oh, I love him. I love him.
But that's kind of what it sounds like, and I mean that in a complimentary way. Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks. Kind of one of those things that, like, I don't know. I've had all these, lyrics sitting around that I haven't used in post bands and stuff like that, and just like I was bored and I just started doing it. I'm not that musically inclined, but I just, we've been using these music programs and lots of trial memberships to different, sequencing programs and, programming and, stuff like that. And I just came up with these songs, and I would go through my notebooks and find like different lines from different songs and put them together, and just kind of like, spent a lot of hours just, at night in my car, singing and yelling into my iPhone, and mixing and like with Bandcamp and like, Acid Pro, and just like, it was a lot easier than I thought. And I just got in a groove, and I just, started making songs.
Is it just you?
Yeah, for the most part. There will be like, there's some live instrumentation and stuff, and our buddy Rob and, some of the Coke Dick guys will be involved and stuff, hoping to play live soon. But like, yeah, it just started out with me trying to see if I can make these easy kind of like cut and paste music things and putting vocals over them. And I did it, and that's why the cover is my trusty auto-tune pedal. Yeah. People want to downplay auto-tune and stuff like that, and it's just like, it's technology, man. I'm not a great singer, and I'm not trying to sound like that. It's my sound, and it's what I like doing.
Well, I think that auto-tune is one of those things that it can either really work or really not work. And I think it's based on how much it's embraced. If it's something that you're trying to hide and use it to smooth over rough edges in someone's vocals, then it grinds my fucking gears because I want those imperfections. That's part of what I like. But when it's something like what you're doing here, what Post Malone does, like when it's really overt, then it really works. Because it's like, I'm not fucking hiding behind this. This is an instrument that I'm using. That makes a world of difference.
And that's just it. It's an electronic album. You know, I mean, there is some live instrumentations on there, but those are cut and paste, you know, instrumentation that I'm doing, you know, like on a computer program. Just on my iPhone, I'm cutting, pasting bars and measures and putting them together. And it's an electronic album, and that includes vocals.
You did most of this on your iPhone?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. 99.9% of the vocals I did was done in my car at night. At night, so I don't wake anybody up, in my car at night with my iPhones, you know, my earphones in my ear, listening to the track and singing into the iPhone. And then putting my, you know, auto-tune pedal on it, and it was a lot easier than I thought.
You've got some incredibly lengthy song titles, except for the second one. My personal favorite on here is Keepsakes and Souvenirs are cool and all, but... And then it kind of, there's an ellipses and there's an entire novel afterwards I'm not going to read. But I really, I think the song's catchy as fuck. Every song on this 6-song EP is catchy as fuck. But this one also is... Dude, like ripping your heart out and holding it in your fist and letting us see it. I mean, just the lyrics here talking about borderline personality disorder and like all these, it's just so personal and I love it, man. Like it's so relatable and brave, lyrically speaking. I really, really like on many levels what you're doing here in terms of the execution of the songwriting and these lyrics, man. You really put out something special here. I'm proud of you. It's great.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Apologies are breaking me. Afraid to find out I'm alone. I fuck everything up most of the time. And since our kids are blessed, give everything to my friends. Breathing palpitations and panic attacks. Well, I lost track, and then those words were so alive. Personality, you can't stand to see me shaking. You hollow out my blood, red eyes, my whole world just spins. Borderline personality, you can't stand to see me shaking. You hollow out my blood, red eyes, my whole world just spins. Dump your mouth to compress the sound. Such an awful, awful noise. I woke up and drew air. What more do you want from me? Borderline personality, you can't stand to see me shaking.
It's a love dance song to my mental illness. I mean, it didn't start out like that, but I wrote the hook, and then the rest of the song just kind of came to me. It's kind of one of the only songs that I wrote as a song in whole. Most of the songs are just bits from different things that I've written. I've just put sentences together. With the song titles, it's just, I kind of wanted to be tongue-in-cheek. I'm really influenced by like...
Morrissey.
I'm really influenced, you know, by, you know, the early emo stuff, the early emo core stuff where, you know, the song titles were very, very long. And that's what I wanted to do with this project. Just kind of, you just hard on the sleeve lyrics with some dance elements and some emo core influences with the song titles.
Before you put this out, you sent me a song, I think it was the first song that you did with this.
Yeah.
That's not on this EP though, right?
That's going to be on the next one. That's more like pop punk oriented.
Okay. What's that song called?
That song is called Personal Jesus by the band Depeche Mode.
Yes. Which I love. I look forward to you putting that up on Spotify too, so I can listen to that more regularly. I mean, I have it, but it's like I gotta like go into my computer and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I look forward to you releasing that. When will your next release be?
That one's going to be soon. I have like 8 songs done for that one.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so it should be out soon. Just kind of trying to decide if I want to put a different song that I'm kind of working on now on it. That album will be, it's still going to be electronic, but it's going to be, like I said, it's done the same way I did the last, so all, you know, cut and paste type of stuff, but it's going to be more like pop, emo influenced. That EP is going to be called Listen Grandpa. Just because you've defended pop punk in the past doesn't necessarily mean you've gone to war.
You make it sound like this DIY project you just kind of like throw together a little bit, but man, I think this could really go somewhere. I think this is really good stuff, and I look forward to hearing more from Teardrop Versus Freight Train. So good work, man.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
People can find that on Spotify and anywhere else?
Spotify and all the stuff.
Just all the stuff.
Yeah, okay. I released it on DistroKid, so it whatever that releases out to. I had to learn how to do it, so I'm kind of new at this.
Sure. And that's Teardrop Versus is spelled out Versus for the record. Teardrop Versus Freight Train. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's always a pleasure to get to talk to you, and I'll be listening to this EP a lot in the coming weeks and whatnot. Looking forward to the next release.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Talk to you later, man.
By the moonlight, you're so beautiful. I will never let you go. But now it's dark and I'm waiting, just waiting. As long as you want me to wait for you. You're real. I'm in the past. I am being suffocated by this tormented air. You're real. Keep breathing your breath. I am being suffocated by this tormented air.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. It is greatly appreciated. And I also, of course, very much appreciate my buddy Dustin Lince coming back on the show to talk about New Order and his own music. Again, if you want to hear more of his band, you can find Teardrop Versus Freight Train on Spotify, on YouTube. Teardrop Versus Freight Train, spelled out normally, like it's not VS, it's like versus, you spell the word versus. And the name of the album again is The Dance Dance Revolution Will Be Televised. If you want to be on the show, you can email me at 9394podcast@gmail.com. You can do any album you want from 1993 to 1994 that I haven't already done on the show, or you can just shoot me a line and say hello. And yes, that's all. That's it. I cannot think of anything else I need to tell you. Rate, review the show. That'd be cool. That's it. Okay. Bye. Bye. '93-'94, a music podcast with Travis Roy, is a labor of love. It is not and never will be monetized. Please don't sue.